Hello, my friends. Welcome to Your Seat Table. I'm Rick, of course. This is Awakenings, a new magic in 2057 for Shadowrun. This is one of these interesting books that I stumbled across some years ago, once again at JCD and Hobby in the Bargain Books. This was produced in 1995 for second edition, and I didn't own this. I didn't buy this back then. And one or two things come to mind as to why that might have been. The originally like I said, I could never find anybody that would want to play this. I only was able to run a couple sessions, and for the most part, I was never able to get a regular table group going who wanted to play Shadowrun on a regular basis. So I stopped when second edition came out. I stopped buying the material, and I don't remember seeing this on the bookshelves at the store. I'm not saying that it didn't, but I don't recall finding it. So the fact is, I came across it in the bargain books and they had it on sale for $1.99. This is the second attempt to sell it because underneath this is another label. So they probably had this on sale for like $10, $9. Because I'm going to guess this was probably either $15 or $20 in that category, in that realm in 1995 when it came out. And you can see that they tried to sell it and it just sat there and it sat there. And finally they put it, this was just, can we give it away kind of price? And I was shocked at, $2 for a game source book. I mean, pre-owned source book thing on it. So it was well worth having. And one of the things about Shadowrun, whenever I think magic and Shadowrun, sometimes, and I know the connection here is probably goofy or whatever you want to call it. The You ever see Big Trouble in Little China? And it's it's a hoot. It's fun to watch. It's kind of has that shadowy run vibe in a little bit, but there's some elements of magic in there. And in my head, I always kind of equate these because there's so many different videos and or movies and book series that would could apply. Blade Runner is often equated to somewhere to being somewhere to Shadowrun. The only difference in Blade Runner is there's no magic at all, and you don't have awakened beings per se. So you don't have orcs and goblins and or orcs and trolls and elves and whatever. So the connection there is sometimes a little dubious, but for me, it was the fact that you could have a neo-modern setting, and the actual setting for Shadowrun is only a few decades. When we were buying these books in the '90s, the early '90s, when the game came out, they were projecting, 2020 or 2010 as being when this sort of stuff broke out. And well, we are in the 2025s now, and we know damn well none of this was ever even close to being accurate. But I found it quite interesting that a lot of technology, a lot of stuff that goes into Shadowrun eerily marks where we are today with a lot of technology and things like that. Not necessarily good, but not necessarily bad. And there's something about the neopolitics too. Uh, it's never since the Civil War in America have we been this close to actually having the possibility of the country falling apart literally and breaking up and there being new political boundaries being set. I mean, the possibilities are there. You don't have to like the politics to understand that the possibilities are there. So we'll look at the table of contents. What you need to know about magic, the ways of magic, beyond the odd coven, becoming a prairie dog, growing up magical, street magic, unorthodox traditions, the magical arsenal, astral advantage, adepts, the voudoun, i.e., voodoo, and major mojo, right? And so this expanded your options for magic and magic items and magic use in Shadowrun and offered some new possible realms. Another thing it also tries to take on is magic in Shadowrun is a completely different animal compared to magic in Dungeons and Dragons in a lot of fantasy setting systems. And there's some connections in that people try to connect between we'll just use Dungeons Dragons as the example and this kind of system. And one of them is things like religious connections, i.e., clerics and psionics, psionicists, and things. This book actually tries to cover a little bit of explaining why that might be. So, looking at psionics, for example, there would be a string of thought or a philosophy in the Shadowrun world that magic is not fantasy magic, as in, wizards casting the whatever, but you're actually tapping the latent human talents to manipulate the energies around us, i.e., more akin to the Force from Star Wars kind of manipulation for magic, because Jedi and Sith can do some stuff that look quite like magic to the right eyes or the wrong eyes, depending on how you looked at it. And yet, it's not psionics as in we understand psionics from Dungeons and Dragons. It's just like clerical power. Clerical magic in Dungeons and Dragons and other fantasy settings is energy based on your faith in a deity. So your deity grants you the ability to do the magics that you do that are considered magic, as opposed to, say, the wizards and sorcerers who use magic from a different angle or have access to it from a completely different non-tangent source versus how the clerics work. But in Shadowrun, magic is magic. How it's applied, there, and they've run this up more than once. Magic in and of itself is not evil. No more than a weapon, a gun and a knife are not evil. It's how they're used that makes things evil. It's not the actual item, or in this case, the magic ability that makes it evil, but it's how you interpret it or how you choose to imply it and how it's viewed by everybody around you. See, Awakenings is a source book for Shadowrun game system, intended as a resource for game masters or players, discussed in depth the vast majority of magical manifestations in the sixth world from the point of view of the people who live there. Awakenings provide a complete picture of the current state of magic in the sixth world, how people see it, how Shadowrunners and others use it, how physical and other adepts fit into the Shadowrun world, and what the latest developments are. That's another thing. In Dungeons and Dragons, it would not be unreasonable to suggest that some of the abilities that monks have and rogues have are kind of magical in an aspect that they're not normal for normal people. You have to really, an adept becomes a specialist to learn how to improve themselves. So in this case, think of the ultimate monk that has magic that enhances their ability to be the physical combat and physical things that they do. So what you need to know about magic. Problem with the reading glasses is the flipping of pages and stuff causes me to get blurry and it gives me a headache. So we get into the ways of magic. Back to it. Just having one of them days. Most people who watch Triad can tell the difference between mages and shamans, or so they think. Thanks to weekly episodes of the Odd Coven, mages are fantasy wizard types that, with their arcane diagrams, ritual trance wands, and pentagrams, they are hopelessly neat, organized, compulsive control freaks. Shamans are the back-to-nature types dancing around out in the woods and calling up the spirits of the rocks and trees. They're party animals who swill home brew, never bathe, and live in tents that look like like an Indian garage sale. Well, it ain't necessarily so. The mage shaman split is true as far as it goes, but it's not as simple as the Odd Coven's characters make it out to be. Right? Yeah, so that would have been a parody TV series for Shadowrun, where you have a mage and a shaman living under the same roof. I'm guessing becoming a prairie dog, whatever. Growing up magical. I always knew I was different. Even as a little girl, I have distinct memories of moments in childhood school with my friends when I felt distant, I suppose is the best way to describe it. separate, apart from the whole scene while I was watching it from far away. It's not that I had an unhappy childhood, don't get me wrong, but I wasn't a typical kid. I didn't have lots of friends, not real ones anyway. I had a lot of imaginary friends as a kid. I used to hold tea parties for them, talk to them all the time. My parents thought it was a cute phase and didn't want to stifle my imagination, so they didn't try to discourage me. I would play hours for myself, my own secret world. Now I know those times were my first taste of magic. In school, my teachers didn't quite know what to make of me. One day they labeled me gifted, the next they're telling me I need to pay attention more. Right? Street magic, corp wage, no thanks, Jim. Right, I just slipped. All right. You know, unorthodox traditions. Psionics, if we talk about psionics right here. I was having a date with my eyesight today, so not good. Right? Magic is no more than a convenient term for what we might well call we'll rephrase it. Magic is no more than a convenient term for what we might as well call folk parapsychology. Jesus, that's a tongue twister. A primitive science that allows for the harnessing of the human's brain inherent psionic powers to manipulate the forces of the electromagnetic spectrum. In our modern age, such techniques need to be refined and codified through scientific study to make them more efficient than the folk of myth and rituals of the time long past. From The Reality of Magic by Peter Isaac. That's magic in a nutshell, folks. Isaac sums it up. Forget all that fairy tale dreck. Forget spells and spirits and all that dreck. It's just your brain working its own magic on electromagnetic energies. Go ahead and flame me if you want. All right, right. You know, magic as a miracle. Yeah, see where they're trying to turn it into a religious connection. So God gives you the ability to do what you do. All right, the spirits do. We get all dressed up, no place to go. The mechanical or the magical arsenal. So spells, physical spells, mana spells, countering spells, foci, focal points, spirits, nature spirits, elemental spirits, magic and healing, healing magicians, paranormals, more tricks to the trade, cybermancy. Right. Hey, you've all had a chance to gain at the recent past about what happened to Hatchetman. If you're smart, you'll actually read it. Here's a little refresher to those who remain ignorant about the pile of nasty crap called cybermancy. Some people say cybermancy is not healing magic, and plenty of others say it doesn't exist. I know better, as does anyone who has ever read Hatchetman's story. His tales made me curious and scared, so I went digging into more info and found enough reliable sources to say that there's some major mojo, heavy duty magic with bad consequences you should be aware of. Apparently, cybernetic rituals in conjunction with the advanced cyber surgical techniques are used to defeat the oral physical threshold of a subject. In plain English, it lets you keep some poor slot alive while you fill him up with enough cyberware to kill him. From what I gather, such people come out of the procedure very powerful and very fragged up as well. The cyberware makes them faster, stronger, deadlier than humanly possible. Plus, they become permanently active on the astral plane and less susceptible to magic than normal metahumans, but they also experience unpleasant physical side effects. I read fragmentary reports of personality dislocation, cancer, all like that. Some nasty stuff. You got some crazy things going on, right? They also introduced some other stuff later in the book. Astral Advantage. Lots of reading. Lots of reading on that stuff. Took me a minute to reread this one. Adepts. I'm a follower of the inner magic. Most of you know me, and those like me as adepts, and you think you know all about our skills and powers. Trust me, you don't. But you might have a glimmer or two of real understanding after you read this file. Get to know us, Chumley. We're useful. Eggheads define adepts as individuals who use their magical talents to boost their meat bodies and exhibit specific magical abilities. Of course, the definition really doesn't tell you much, now does it? astral awareness, the ability to shrug off serious physical injury. That specific magical abilities tag can include any number of whiz little tricks because no two adepts display the same abilities. So when my allusion to uh, a monk. So these are people who use their magic ability to enhance themselves specifically, their abilities, their senses, their capabilities to a degree that would rival cyber technology. So you could have people hardwired to have high reflexes and the ability to shrug off damage and to basically replicate this using magic. So now we have a person who has all the abilities that you would have if you were cybernetically enhanced. And in some cases, taking that to the next step where you actually have your cybernetic enhancements and then you further improve them using magic. Although there's a school of argument that suggests that magic in and of itself and technology are not intermixable. So if you were to have a magically enhanced reflexes, and then you have wired reflexes installed in your body that they basically do not work together. So you'd use the technological advance reflexes that your body has because of your technology. Applying magic to that's not going to improve it. The only time that would come into play is if somehow your technology is flawed or dampened somehow. But then there's another philosophy that suggests the other way around, that this is just basically stackable. And I think that that's kind of a I don't know. I think that's a bit of a cheat in my mind. So discovery, devs can discover that they got power in all kinds of ways, just like magicians. Sometimes a magician will recognize latent adept by the kid's aura and offer to train him. That's how it works in the Native American nations. Tribal shaman spots the young adept when the kid apprentices with a teacher who helps him make him the most of his talent. Right? Training, finding the way of the warrior. There's always those people, those individuals throughout history who were such natural warriors, such natural fighters, strategists, leaders of men. And some aspects, that's the path of an adept, right? The invisible way, the spirit way of the artist, adopting a Giza, twisted way initiation. Right, so we get the gist of, foci, physical magicians. Yeah. For decades, most folks believed the ability and mindset of a physical adept was totally incompatible with the abilities and mindset of a magician. The thinking was physical adepts are grounded, their magic is so strong, grounded their magic so strong in their bodies that they couldn't wrap their minds around the more complex astral manipulations of sorcery and direct like that. The two paths could never meet, and so the idea went. Then in 2051, an anthropologist named Helen Rainwater began a study of ancient Japanese ninja clans. She wanted to show that these slots in the black pajamas possessed primitive physical adept abilities. During her study, Rainwater came across numerous local legends that seemed to show these guys could cast spells. It led her to theorize that such undiscovered type of adept, a physical magician, exists. According to Rainwater, these physical magicians have the powers of the physical adept, plus some abilities that are supposed to belong only to the magicians and non-physical adepts. No one seemed to find a real life physical magician yet, but a lot of people seem to take the idea seriously, right? And that makes for one tough hombre. So we move into chapter voodoo, however you want to pronounce it, right? Voodoo and the magic application. Yeah, the central element of all Voodoo traditions is the invocation of a powerful spirit called a loa, which possesses the worshiper. During possession, the loa's mount, the worshiper or other host body, becomes a vassal for the loa. The mount speaks with the loa's voice and acts like the loa, virtually becomes the loa. Right? Some dangerous stuff there. Some magic, it's implied in the books, should not be accessible to the player characters. Right off the bat, blood magic comes to mind. I have the source book for Aslan. Anyway, what used to be Mexico and the Yucatan Peninsula is this corporate-owned Incan-based mind empire. And I'll eventually review that book too. That's one I've been. I actually finished reading up on that the other day, but it's not on my list to do today. Uh, but in it, they have this practice called blood magic, and you can do some pretty horrific stuff. But at the end of the day, it says right and pretty blatant in a section in the book that this should not be magic available to the players. The players should not be able to utilize it. The reason for it is blood magic literally uses the blood, and the blood, and some blood is far more powerful than others. So human sacrifices is what they're dancing around, and we don't want to do that as players unless you're running a dark campaign. If you're running a dark campaign, then have at it, because that sort of stuff fits right in it. So my thought process is that voodoo zombie, the voodoo zombie stuff should not. That should be the stuff your PCs are fighting against, not actually utilizing themselves, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion, of course, right? So you have to make that decision on what you want to do. Work Loa, bot Loa. Yeah, the Locha Asher or bot Loa appear to be free to work Loa. These free spirits seem to prefer areas where the voudoun is practiced, others unexplained phenomena related to voudoun practices. A houngan can convince the Loa to a chit to allow a chit to serve him by offering some service or payment in return for learning and using the spirit's true nature. As much more dangerous and a much more dangerous technique. Once again, these are sort of things that probably should be relegated to the bad guys in your campaigns and not necessarily the players. But that's once again up to you, how you want to look at it. Talking about zombies there, voodoo, sorcery, a bunch of terms I'm not even going to try to pronounce. The Awakened Verdun. Oh, excuse me, Verdun glossary. Even with the glossary there, major mojo. So there are magicians, and then there are magicians. And the bigger the corporation, the deeper the pockets, the more powerful magicians they got on payroll. That's kind of what we're going here. Yeah. Right. No big book or practical magic would be complete without a little lowdown on the biggest bad guys and the creepiest non-meta humans. So here it is. These are the slots you don't want to run into, but inevitably will in our shady line of work. The Lone Star FRT Magic Boys, Quirk Combat Mages, nasty juju around corpse sites, Syads, and various security forces, vampires, astral weirdness, shape changers, toxic baddies, they're all here, along with a little practical advice how to deal with them. We're talking war stories, folks, but this whole file is your chance to tell everybody how I slotted with the fill in the blank and lived to brag on about it. As usual, I have asked a few talented cobs of mine to kick things off. All readers are feel free to chime in with your own gin of any old time talent. There's only one way to handle these slags. Keep out of their friggin' way. Been there. Hey. Lone Star's Whiz Boys. Everybody reading this post knows Longstar has combat mages on his fast response and SWAT teams. Most of you probably also know the SWAT and FRT teams are also include some physical adepts. Anyone who's ever had bad luck run into a star FRT or SWAT team knows that above mentioned whiz boys are major bad news. But I'll bet none of you noodles, that's an awful lot of you who know this stuff, never really thought about the hundreds of ways the star can frag with your little Shadowrun. So I'm here to fill you in on some of that stuff, right? So fun with the combat mages. Fun with physical adepts. Fun with regular cops. Pay attention now. The following is the most important lesson you will ever learn. Mundane star troopers can have magic too. No, they can't toss spells, but yes, Virginia, they can sure as direct resist juju you throw at them. Especially the mundanes on the FRTs. They've got mage buddies in whose company they risk their lives every time they hit the streets. Do their mage buddies just give them a little magical helping hand? Just as sure as elves got pointy ears, they do. I've run across mundane troopers with personal anti-bullet barrier shields cast on them and quickened to work permanently. A couple of years ago, some people raised the issue about Lone Star posts. It's true. Barrier spells, including reaction combat sense, the ordinary gunnies may have just about anything to help them survive a mini war in the streets. Right. Is disembodied fuzz, astral patrol cops. Magical backup in Lone Star means more than whiz boys and syads on the FRT and SWAT teams. It also means the cops on astral patrol. And we got corporate magicians as technology. Yeah, these guys have got some pretty crazy stuff. This pretty potent forces. And what they say, whereas as a technology and Aslan and the other begins. So in theory, they're both the same. And the core book on it highly emphasizes that the corporation and the country, for the most part, are literally the same. It just there's hard to say that where one begins and the other ends. Selder Krupp, another one with that is fun to tag with. They don't have as many magically active personnel as technology, but they integrate them well within their regular security. And you can bet there's one mean combat mage assigned to practically every guard patrol. Then we get other corps, special forces, and other tough guys. That's the other thing. So when you're dealing with, the run-of-the-mill street thugs or the run-of-the-mill corporate security goons, that's the run-of-the-mill for a reason. So, like a lot of organizations, the bigger the organization, the more money and wealth and power they have, the triangle's up. So you get this pyramid effect. So at some point, your mundane, regular run-of-the-mill security guards down here, SWAT is only about midway up. Then you get the top tier stuff. The top tier stuff is where when your player character, get off the keyboard, damn it. Come on, get off. God, I hate that. Walk right across the keyboard and can do any number of things, and that just drives me nuts. Don't like it. I keep wanting to build something to sit across the damn keyboard to keep her from doing that stuff. Now, special forces, they're for special forces for a reason, and you add that with magic ability, which you're really talking some tough hombres here, and you should play them out that way in my mind. The opportunities and possibilities are quite extensive. Why don't you get your attention out there, huh? Somebody out there? Maybe somebody was out there. Magical threats, toxic spirits, and shamans. There's a couple source books that came out in the late 90s talking about insects and toxic spirits, toxic shamans, insect spirits, insect shamans. And there's a section here that talks about those. And they're both nasty, nasty buggers. And inevitably, you'll have players who want to play in those categories. And I always say resist that because these are natural bad guys and it should stay that way unless you're running a dark campaign. If you're running a dark campaign, then have at it. And keep in mind that by running a dark campaign, a lot of aspects means that your characters are the bad guys, and that the good guys are going to try to put them down, and that's because it's a survival thing. So insect spirits and shamans, right? Let's see, where did I miss the toxic one? Yeah, these guys ain't no joke, and they really are hard to play. Yeah, toxic spirits and shamans. Throughout history, the inquisitive minds of men have produced strange and wondrous technologies. Often these technologies have been harnessed to the benefit of mankind and the creatures of the world, but just as often these technologies have produced harmful effects, blah, blah, blah. Right? Perhaps the most disturbing manifestation of metahumans' depredations are toxic mutations of the spirits of men. These arise in the domains where misery, poverty, cruelty, and regimentation, repression, and denial of life reduce people to hopelessness. All toxic spirits are equally recognized by their twisted, crippled look and appearance in astral space. These are beings that are particularly dangerous because they possess all the powers of free spirits, plus they may travel outside their domains at the orders of their summoning shamans. And sometimes they can do it on their own, right? Magic gave life and form to the twisted results of man's arrogant attitude towards his environment. Then we move on to insect spirits and shamans. Ants, flies, termites, wasps, roach, mantids, these are all insect totems. No one really knows where they came from. No one can really explain their existence or their goals, but nearly everyone, except for the shamans of these totems, agrees that these strange totems are very, very dangerous. Of all the generally harmful totems, insect totems target their activities most obviously and relentlessly against meta-humanity. Generally, insect shamans believe they can use the insect totem for their own gain when they first accept the totem's guidance. Whether you consider the vast power of these totems' will and temptation is easily understood that in all cases, however, the alien nature of the totem eventually merges, becoming, yeah, what is it? Her blower nose out there and it threw me off. However, alien nature of the totem eventually emerges, becomes ascendant, and the totem ends up using the shaman for its own goals. So it says here a comment. Hey, I got a question. How's it all the bad guys are shamans? If you believe this, folks, the nature boys are responsible for raising all that nasty stuff in the world. Anyone ever hear of a hermetic gone wrong? Well, of course, there can be bad magicians for various reasons. Like I said, then there's this one on the infected. The insect shamans or the insect totems, totally bad guys material. Totally bad guy material. It's a mistake to use those for let your good guy player characters dabble in that stuff because at the end of the day, it's unless you're running a Shadowrun with a Call of Cthulhu vibe to it, that might be different because in the early days, your player character who gets involved in specifically in with the insectoid gets an insect totem with this idea that's going to make them more powerful and give them access to very exotic spells and abilities, which is true in the early days. But over time, gradually, they either consume their mind becomes consumed by this totem, the spirit that's melded with them, or corrupted by it. Either way, doesn't bode well for the future of the player character. And then we get into Wendigos, even worse. Vampires. We have a section on vampires in here. Other threats. All right. Then we get the rules. Magic skills, skill defaults, astral stealth, new skills, adequate, magical, aurora reading, psychometry, assessing cyberware, directing, assessing, I said astral stealth, key signatures, altering a spell signature, identifying a spell signature, magic loss, stem patches, meta magic, reflective shielding, i.e., shielding, wards, tuned wards, concealment wards, wards and foci, spirits, manifesting, combat, nature spirit domain, foci, centering focus. Centering focus or foci enhances the character's concentration while imagining to additional number of dice. That's so you see a wizard who's got a staff. It's a foci. This use of a wand. Wand is a foci, and that's how you would apply it in Shadowrun. It is a means by which they can concentrate or enhance their ability of their magic on a case-by-case limited basis, and some are more important than others. And it's something key to note that foci can come in a lot of forms. I think that one sense there was this person that had a pistol or a gun, some kind of gun that was a foci, which I thought was okay. I had to, I rolled with it. Another wizard, he had a walking cane, and his walking cane doubled as a weapon because he could club people with it. And he wanted to have a a hidden blade in it too, and be a focus. And I told him, I says, no, I think it would have to there are elements of what makes it up. So adding a weapon inside of it would break up the foci, so it wouldn't work. And that was my ruling on it. So we talk about awaken oddities, psionics, and explain how in reality the religion Another way magic manifests itself, we're not quite able to believe in its existence, is demonstrated by the way the evangelistic magicians and street saints focus their magical abilities through their fate. Game Master can use this unusual characters to make the players wonder about the real source of NPC strange abilities. Sure, that thunderbolt looks like magic, but will a mana barrier really turn aside the wrath of an unspecified god? And Shadowrun makes no judgments about the value of any individual religious belief. For the purposes of post-awakened magic, all belief systems are equally significant. The dogma counts for less than the individual's faith in the dogma, which turns the belief system into an effective magical tool. There's no religion that is better, magically speaking, than another. Right? Pop cultism, paranormal animal totems, the gargoyle, the Leviathan, the Griffin, the Pegasus, the Phoenix, the Unicorn. Totem creation. Why a new totem? The archetypes, advantages, disadvantages, adept rules. I think in the handful, I'm trying to remember my head. It was 3 to 5 campaigns, mini campaigns or campaigns that I was able to run over the decades with Shadowrun. And I don't recall having any particular one person who really got into an adept, because I don't think we played long enough for that to become a thing. Had I had a regular table, I knew a couple players that would have been keen on having an adept in Shadowrun once they understood what an adept was and how it could be applied. I also don't think it was early on in first edition. I don't think this was one of those options that were available to us, which is probably why we never experimented with it. The opportunity never came up. So, such is what it is. Learning the physical adept powers, escape artist is a new skill. The new physical adept powers: blind fighting, counter strike, deadly damage, distance strike, empathetic sense, enhanced coordination. In some ways, you can look at the movies and Jackie Chan comes to mind. Bruce Lee comes to mind. There were literally adepts of the martial arts. They become very, very in tune with both their physical abilities and limitations, and how to spiritually and intellectually motivate themselves to move beyond those limitations, which made their actions and their movements and some of the things they did seem almost magical, almost impossible, which is what makes them so good. In another aspect, you could make an argument like, oh, geez, what's that feller's name? God, I can see it in my head. Oh, the movie series based on a book series, and the guy's this assassin for hire, and he retires, and then the Russian mob, somebody kills his dog, uh, uh, comes after him and gets him, and he's such a murdering machine. He's so good at everything he does. He could easily fall into that adept category. Uh, Jack Reacher? No, Jack Reacher ain't right. I can't. And I'll forget. I'll think of it later when I don't and when it's no longer viable to post it. What it is. Sixth sense, rooting, rapid healing, physical magicians, the optional rules, then the voudoun rules or voodoo. Yeah, couldn't find any kind of caution or warning section. I'm not saying it isn't one in here, but I couldn't quite find one where it would give you really a good, that warning. This is probably not for player characters kind of stuff. And so it says Shadowrun Vuna is actively practiced version of shamanic tradition. Instead of following one of the animal totems of standard shamanism, the practitioner of Voudoun believes in is guided by various mystical beings such as the idols. Idols of European nature magic, the Germany source book, and the totem table. And I've got the Germany source book. We'll get to that eventually. Relationship between the Voudoun shaman, the houngan, and his or her patron Loa, the Mat Teti, is similar to between a shaman and his or her totem, although there are some important differences. First, a houngan may contact and gain benefits from a loa other than his metati, and something unheard of in the traditional shamanism. Second, the loa demand payment for their service, a tribute that can take many forms. Finally, the most dramatic difference, yeah, that's a challenge. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, I don't see anything. I'm gonna get some various loa here, examples of all terms that I can barely pronounce. I'm not even gonna try. Calling the loa, dismounting, mounted houngan, feeding the loa, contacting the new loa, servitors, conjuring, creating covis or govis, govai. Correct to govai, houngan first makes a physical vessel and a lid using material from the area near his or her hanfor. Traditionally, houngan-shaped clay or dirt dried it into hangor in the hanfor, etched it with images of the mateti, and painted it before attempting to enchant it, i.e. making your own version of a damn foci or something. I never quite got into this one, so I'm not going down that path. Zombies, Petro rights, Bokars, Street Grimoire, elemental effects, light, sand, smoke, combat spells, redirect, shatter shield, rot, detection spells. So basically a spell list of possible additional spells to add to your repertoire. Right on. I'm not sure I thoroughly butchered this one, but Magic in Shadowrun is a little different from your traditional RPGs where magic is prevalent. And it can be a force equalizer to a point. There ain't a whole lot of magicians out there that can create a anti-bullet shield powerful enough to stop a troll firing, emptying a minigun in your direction. Just saying. It's possible. And if you run into a magician with that level of capability, you need to reconsider your location. You might want to decide discretion is the better part of value and bug out. It's just like their comments about using magic when talking with the elite of the elite. So there's a section where they talk about the elves and Tir Nagir and Tonagol, or however the Irish version of it's pronounced, and the paladins, both the adepts and the magicians, extremely powerful hombres. Generally speaking, if these guys come for you, it's like the the Wildcats. These are no joke. These are not people you throw around on just to throw around. You should reserve them for really key important moments in your campaign. And potentially just one bad guy chasing one of these guys gets a bug in their butt chasing your group could be in for a hard ride. That's just my opinion on that. Anyway, I'm Rick. God, hope you guys have yourself a great weekend. This is the first week of May of 2025. Once again, starting to see a little bit of blue sky out there, but not much. I mean, it really has been a gloomy day, and the weather is kind of, I can't tell if that's patchy blue sky, blue patches I'm seeing off to the west, or if that's just dark gray clouds that are making me think that they're not. Anyhow, you guys